First of all, I would really like to thank everyone who has liked my videos and left comments. Especially the comments where you contribute to whatever the tutorial is about, bring your own suggestions. I think this is helpful when I read them and also helpful to people watching the videos. I recently someone left a comment asking about suggesting a tutorial topic, how to get organized for writing. A lot of artists, writers, me included, we have ways of thinking that include, I think, a lot of what would be considered random elements to our thinking that happen more often than the general population. And while this trait is not necessary to be creative, it definitely shows up in a lot of creative people. An example of why this certain random way of thinking is helpful is I could be talking to someone about the state of transportation in the city I live in, and then I get a picture in my mind of these veins and arteries, and that association could lead to a story. It also leads to a lot of disorganization. I have this amazing power where I could walk into a completely organized and neat room, and in record-breaking time I could turn it into a complete mess, total chaos, total disorganization. I suspect that a lot of great storytellers out there never become writers because of the problem with organizing. From an inherently disorganized person, here are organizational skills for writers. Okay, first of all, when you're creating new material, make a mess. Make the biggest mess you can. That's what we're really good at. That's what we should go ahead and do. And without reserve, just scribble in notebooks, have dozens of notebooks, have different topics all over them scattered around, scrap paper, have some of it on the computer, other on napkins, write on your palm. Do the quickest, easiest way of getting those words out of your head, onto the page, onto your arm. Make just, whenever you're writing, continually try to make the biggest mess you can. I'm not saying to try to make a big mess. I'm trying to say that a good amount of your writing activity is where you're completely unconcerned with organize, where you do the next easiest thing as to get those words out out in print. Strategy number 2, make organizing one of your mini projects that you always start out your writing session with. Whenever I am about to start writing, I have 1 or 2 mini projects. As an example, currently when I go to my desk, the first thing I do, I have a book on how to draw human figures, and I will spend no more than 3 minutes reading, drawing from the images in the book, whatever it is, as long as it's one of these projects where I devote a tiny amount of time each day. And who knows, I might spend 2 years going through that book, but it's a good way to get warmed up. It's a good way to get the gears rolling in the morning and get ready to focus on some serious writing. So, as a mini project, you can organize. Just if you have a lot of stuff in a notebook, take 1 page out of the notebook each beginning of a writing session and type it into your computer. Just organize it only in a tiny amount. And if you do that every day for the rest of your life, in general, your writing material is going to be more accessible to you, and you'll be able to have more control over a larger amount of it at a time. If you're working on a lengthy story and you really want to organize, to have a clear understanding of when, what happens, and, you know, like, let's say you have an idea about changing one part, but where was that part? Was that in the beginning? And, you know, this happens all the time where in a lengthy story, it's really difficult to keep in track where all of those different scenes and events, exactly when they took place. And what has happened to me is that I've had two characters have the same conversation at different points in the story. And a great way to organize a lengthy story is to draw a map. It does not have to be a map if your story does not involve any kind of travel. If it just all takes place on the same block, then a map of that block is not necessarily helpful. But just some way that you can have where you can have a bird's eye view, look down on your entire story, see a basic map of when different events take place, and just have the line that represents the course of the story, and then tag it with different events when those two characters spoke. And just have it, use post-it notes, or if you're working with I use LibreOffice Draw, which is basically it makes it pretty easy to add labels to a visual vector image program, and in that way you can just glance at your map and then you know exactly where each part of the story is at. Along the same lines, a timeline is also a great way of making it so that you have something that you can just glance at and know exactly where all the different parts of the story, how they line up and are put together. Nabokov is famous for his index cards. When he worked on a story, he would have a pack of those index cards, and he'd write down the different events in the story, and then that way he could rearrange them and try putting put them in different order to work out exactly how he would write the story when he was working on an overview for his story. And that's a great system. That is a great way of organizing your story. What happens is that great ideas get buried in the writing. As the years go by, as we continue to write, it's like a landfill where where some ideas end up getting lost and to never be found again. Ideally, what we want to do is have it so that exactly the ideas that we need to think about and remember and look at and work with what we're currently writing is there for us to see, is there for us to find. Be creative about the way you organize. If you're naturally a very happily disorganized person, full of a happy life as us disorganized people are, go ahead and color code your filing system. Find creative ways of making the information you're working on accessible. Like, I use wall space. It's there. There happens to be wall space around my computer, around where I keep notebooks, and so, like, if I want to keep track of all the characters in my story, and let's just say, for the sake of argument, that there are 200 characters in the story, how in the world am I going to remember all of them and who's who and when they appear in the story and all of that? I could take a post-it note and have the name of each of those characters, have them on one wall and near my computer where I could change them around. I could have columns for each chapter of the story. I could have repeated, I could have if there's a character that appears in 5 of those chapters, I could have 5 post-it notes for each time they appear. If I don't see it in the course of my writing activity, it's buried. It's buried away and I don't have access to it. So when I'm doing a 3-minute house cleaning at the beginning of my writing session, never any longer than 5 minutes, a very tiny amount of house cleaning, I'll go and find something and ask myself, where can I put this where it needs to be seen? And just think about where my writing activity takes me, and then I can go and put it where I think I'll find that information exactly when I need it. So basically my book is not one document, and I write script for my webisodes. I break it up into episodes, and they each go in their own folder, and in that way it gives me a little more control about how to arrange the story. I use a freeware program called Mark Folder, which you can use to color code the folders on your computer. And in that way, like I have one folder that all the folders that keep character sketches, I can color code a certain color, and while I'm writing, I can instantly identify where the folder is I need. If you change the story and you don't want to completely delete a previous version of the story, make sure that you put it well away from the project file you're currently working on. Create another file where you have orphaned parts of that story where you can, for now, forget about it, so that it's not clutter that's making it more difficult for you to work on the project as it currently is. And writing is as much about removing parts of a story as it is about creating new parts for it. See, as you can see here on the left side of my monitor, I basically have anything thematic that applies to my story. And as an example, I think I have one thing, tragicomic, because to me that really galvanizes what I want the overall story to be about. And when I want to contemplate the themes of my story, I know where to look. It's always on the left side of my monitor. But I would highly recommend using a smaller writing, like Windows notebook, just a very, very lightweight writing program. Like, let's say if you're writing poetry, if you have one of those documents for each poem, then you could keep them in a folder, and instead of them being in one document where you can't see at a glance what poems are in what folder, then your writing is less accessible. But if you use one of those notebook programs that take a split second to load and are only like 3 kilobytes instead of 30 kilobytes, you can divide up your writing so that you can see more of it. You definitely do not need to have one project on one document. So if you have a folder titled Character Sketches, you click on that folder. Each character has their own notebook document and with their name on it, so that you can see at a glance all those characters. Click on one, the notebook document pops up. It has some notes, some overall notes about who that character is, where they take place in the story. Say your main project is a horror novel you're working on. Its title is Human Remains. Now, if you had your entire project, you're going to write, the short novel, you want to finish it in under 2 years, and you have it all on one document, Human Remains. And now, how accessible is that information at a glance? But if you divide it up, if you have it in chapters and the titles of each chapter, then when you go to that project, you automatically have more control over that information. When you divide your project up, psychologically, it's a huge help also, because if for a few weeks you're only going to work on one chapter, going to that one folder that is a lot less to deal with at a time. You know the rest of the project is there, but you can kind of forget about it a little bit while you're focusing on that one chapter. Okay, use an Explorer program. I use Windows, so I use Windows Explorer. And basically this is where I can look at all the folders on the computer. This is an organization program. So on my story, I have a folder for each episode of the story, and I have you have a side window that you can open up so that you can look at the whole folders tree, and then I have them named so that I know exactly, I can look at it and know exactly what each folder is. It gives me a good sense of the timeline. It gives me a good idea what is going to be in each of those folders. And it's the first thing I open up when I start up the computer. So I've divided it into 6 books, and you can go into book 1 and you automatically can look and know where each chapter is at. And as you can see here, I have character sketches that are only in book 1. But if you go into the main project folder, there are character groups for characters that will show up throughout the story. And then as I go into each chapter, I have my own document for each chapter that I can go to. And as you go along, I have a pretty clear idea about what takes place in each chapter. This is the one I'm working on now, and as you can see, I haven't drawn the drawings for it yet. So basically, and then I use that freeware. There's freeware. Mark folder is a freeware program that you can use to color code, so that when I want to go to my journal, and in the journal is just kind of, it might have to do, the heart of the story is where I put like themes and anything that has to do with the overall concepts working in the story. And I also have a map, and the map makes it to where I can at a glance know what takes place in the story, when, names, so that you can remember what the names of the town you're in. And also I happen to have like what weather, what time of year it is. So that took place in spring and winter, so that I also have a good idea about the overall change of time throughout the story. So basically, I just try to work it out where the information I need to work with is near to the information I'm working with. And this system always changes, and it's always in a state of disorganizing. Like half of these in my journal, but you can see how I used, instead of using a word processor, these notebook documents are just easier for, you don't have to worry about spelling or dividing it into paragraphs. These are just notes, and then that way it's easy for me to see where different notes are at. Like when I showed you the map, I didn't sit down and do the map all in one day. This was one of my mini projects every morning. I would work on the map, and first I did it on paper and tape it to my wall and add maybe just one word each day, and I'd never work on it more than 5 minutes each day. And this is one of those mini projects that took maybe half a year to do, but it was just a warm-up project. And my point is I never put in a huge amount of time into organizing. I would just do it every once in a while, just a little bit at a time. And I never feel like my project needs to be totally disorganized, because anytime I work on it, it will fall into a certain amount of disorder. Thank you so much for watching my tutorial. If you would like to encourage me to make more of them, please take the time to go check out solomation.com, where I'm posting all my webisodes for free, and it's my lifetime project. I would greatly appreciate it if you just watch it. I just finished totally redoing episode 2. It barely resembles what it looked like up until last night when I uploaded the revision. So if you have a chance, check out the episode 2 at my website. Also, please vote to have more of these tutorials made by hitting the like button and subscribing, telling a friend about my tutorials and my webisodes. And what was the other thing? And please leave a comment if you have some ideas to contribute to the topic covered in this tutorial. By all means, please leave a comment so that me and the other viewers can have a chance to get even more information on this topic of how to organize for writers. Something I haven't covered, contribute by leaving a comment. I hope your writing goes great, and have a good day.